Another thing I wanted to ask you specifically about was an interview you did with the Great Corn Dog Central fan site years ago, where you briefly mentioned that there was actually a lost pilot for 12-ounce mouse that you unfortunately were not able to save. And I was wondering if you could maybe give us any information about that. Tell us what this would have been. Do you have any scripts or any artifacts or audio or anything like that?
Man, I wish I used a different phrase when I did that interview. All right, so I mean, it wasn't like a lost pilot per se. It was just most shows will go through a large number of rewrites before production starts. Like Aqua Teen had 25 drafts. Episode 2, Leprocopolis had like 18 drafts. But Mouse was kind of unique because we had so little oversight. So they get written, then they get recorded, no rewrites. But except for the pilot, there was one rewrite that Matt wanted to do. He wasn't told to. So in my mind, I feel like that was kind of a lost pilot because we never do two versions. It's like it's unheard of, and I don't think we've ever made two versions. Well, that's not true. Spider-Man is two versions, um, but yeah, we just had we made the radio play. We used all the voices from people around the hallway. And when me and Matt were reviewing it, we both kind of came to the same conclusion. It's like, well, some this is good, but some of it's not great because like it's non-professional VO talent, um, and we felt like we could execute it better later. So two characters were cut from the show.
Could you give us any further information about these characters?
Sure. Well, one of them was a valet. Like the jet taxi comes crashing in, crushing a car, and then a valet comes out.
Sir. Excuse me, sir. You can't park here. You can't park here. You can't park here. Go away. You can't park here. You can't park here. What are you thinking?
And the art for the valet evolved or became Golden Joe. I mean, I know this because when I look at the old files, uh, all the characters, Golden Joe's lines were referred to as valet, and his character art is labeled valet.
Even in the later scripts for the first season, he's still referred to as valet.
No, I mean he became Golden Joe pretty quickly,
Okay.
and then
So, okay, Golden Joe was going to be a valet.
Golden Joe's his own thing, but we use the character design of the valet for Golden Joe. The first voice, it was like a little too weird.
Sir, excuse me. You can't park here. You can't park here.
But those lines were given to the girl with the green sweater. In episode 2, I believe, she comes in, they're riding in a tank, and this girl comes in.
You can't park that tank here. Sir? Sir? Excuse me? You can't park that tank here. Sir? You can't park that tank here. Excuse me, sir? You can't park that tank here. Excuse me. You can't park that tank here.
Those were the lines that were originally given to someone else. So we just moved that scene. It's not about the taxi, it's about a tank. And we put that scene into episode 2. And then the other character that was cut was named Lou. And he was the boss of Mouse. He owned the taxi cab company. And Mouse would show up and then he would get yelled at.
You're out of control, this town. You're never going to be anything in this town. You're nothing but a 12-ounce mouse.
But yes, Mouse had a boss at one point, and we cut that. Well, anyway, the those two guys were so cool about their characters being cut. Like they just didn't care. I think they were glad that they were cut from the show because then they'd get hassled anyway. Like apparently for like 4 more years if we'd kept them in. It was like Keith Crawford, everyone's boss, was Lou, the owner, and Pete Smith was the valet. And
The same Pete Smith who has a holiday every September.
is that when it is? Yes, Pete Smith Day. I want to say that's the anniversary of his retirement.
Right.
I
So,
I think the guys who write the bumps just kind of were having fun with it, and
So these guys were cool with having their characters cut.
Gosh, I hope so, because otherwise we may have really insulted them. Hey, that's why they never spoke to me again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, they were fine with it. And I think it made the show a bit better. But because we lost those scenes, we actually had to expand the other scenes. And a fun little exercise, if you want to, is if you go back and listen to Hired, Matt Malero actually had a cold when he was doing pickups to record more dialogue to fill in that gap. And if you listen very carefully, you can hear the lines that were added, which, I mean, it isn't a lot. I'd have to go back and listen to the actual record. But like, I know for an absolute fact, like when the meteor smashes into his head and it's like a little muffled, he has a head cold and he's like,
First, I need to check with my boss because he's a shark.
and but I can hear it. I can hear it. Like he was super congested and like there's a bunch of lines throughout the show.
So you mentioned that you do possess some recordings from this pilot. How much of the radio version do you have or have access to?
I mean, that's definitely in the area of lost media because back then, like internet speeds weren't great. Like you couldn't just export a QuickTime and email it to someone or give it to yourself because we would transfer everything to a half-inch tape or VHS tape. We call it a half-inch tape in the industry, but it's VHS to everyone else. But anyway, whenever cuts would go out, those tapes would get recycled. And if we kept a version of everything on VHS, then you would just have crates and crates and crates of these big black
Right.
unlabeled everything. So all the cuts of the first pilot are gone. But I mean, there was no picture to it because we made the decision to rewrite during the radio play phase. And then I guess Malero has all the scripts or had them. I mean, it's possible they exist at the physical storage facility somewhere off site, but I mean, that place is crazy, man. It's like the inside of that warehouse in Indiana Jones.
So you say it never made it past the radio play stage, but were there any like storyboards or concept art?
Storyboards.
'Cause I know people have been asking about it.
What the hell's a storyboard?
It's a board with stories.
We just didn't really. The boring story. No, we just didn't work that way. Because we had so few assets, like we didn't really need to storyboard anything. I mean, you just set up the wide shot and then the close up, and then maybe motion path it. So, I mean, storyboards basically happened in our head like half an hour before we started editing. So there's no storyboards. I don't have any scripts. I mean, it's just that audio. I mean, I guess in theory, it'd be possible to reconstruct the radio play, but it'd be a hell of a lot easier with the script.
I'd love that if you could. Is it possible to obtain this script and potentially even do that one day?
I mean, if Malero still has it somewhere, but I mean, Malero doesn't even remember recording the first version. I was talking to him a few months back, and I mentioned I found the audio for Lou, and he was like, "Lou, what the hell's a Lou?" He's like, "You remember Mouse's boss?" And it's like, "Nope, that didn't happen." But I know it did because I was listening to it the other day.
But you say if you could find this script, it wouldn't be too hard for you to kind of piece it together and kind of remake it.
I'm not going to remember which takes I picked. It would never be the same as whatever I did in the summer of 2004.
You're right. In this pilot, I know you already said you reused Golden Joe, but the art for Golden Joe. But were there any other characters that were radically different in design, in comparison to how the final cut of the episode Hired turned out?
No, we don't make mistakes. Never. We never go back. No, all joking aside, We were pretty happy with everything. And if there were new designs, I wouldn't be the person to know. Our character designer over at Radical Axis would have been the one getting notes and told, no, try it again, try this. Like I would only get the finished product. But Todd Redner over at Radical Axis would be the one interacting with Matt, hammering out a final design.
That's a good show. You're right. It's not a good show at all.